So good morning, everyone, or good evening if you're in Aachen. Welcome to today's lecture series as part of the Sustainability Council. My name is Andrew, my pronouns are he and him, and I work at the Sustainability Council here at the University of Alberta. Today we will hear from Dr. Bastian, and I would like to start today's lecture with a treaty acknowledgement. The University of Alberta respectfully acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory. This land is the ancestral space of the Papa-Chase Cree and Métis Nation and the traditional territory of Blackfoot, Cree, Dene, Stoney Nakoda, Anishinaabe, and many other Indigenous peoples whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. As a settler, I continue to reflect on what it means to live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory and am committed to growing my knowledge and understanding of these important histories and how I can honor the gifts of these lands. The Sustainability Council works with all faculties at our university to spark learning, discovery, and citizenship for sustainability. We offer courses and experiential learning opportunities for students to support sustainability-related research, put on sustainability awareness events, and engage with the broader community on sustainability initiatives. The lecture series is a joint partnership between RWTH Aachen University in Germany and the University of Alberta here in Canada. Jan Müller is here to speak more about the partnership between our two universities.
Thank you, Andrew, for making the introductions. I don't know if you have included my slide by now, but that's okay. I will just tell everybody why I'm here. First off, good morning or good evening. It's great to see all of you. I want to keep this brief as some of you might not have heard why we're actually here and why we're doing this lecture series, the very first lecture series that we have as universities. RWTH Aachen and the University of Alberta have cooperated since 2017, and we usually term this a strategic partnership, meaning that we work together on all institutional levels on different academic disciplines as well. What that means is that you, either being in Aachen or being in Edmonton, have a wide array of opportunities to collaborate with one another. We do offer various research projects and programs in order for you to be able to either travel to Aachen or to travel to Edmonton in order to undertake research. We, for instance, have an undergraduate research program for students of the University of Alberta wishing to conduct research in Germany, but we also have the same for students from Germany wanting to conduct research at the University of Alberta. We have the same also, even though it's a bit of a different setup because you can stay longer for graduate and PhD students and for postdocs as well. And as part of the partnership, both institutions have also agreed to work on sustainability issues, as it is one of the core topics of our partnership. And that is also why we're here today. And we're really happy to see that we have found 4 lecturers in total who are willing to present different topics of sustainability. And for that matter, we certainly hope that you will enjoy 1, 2, if not all of the lectures we will present to you within the couple or next, I think, 3 to 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan. Yes, as pointed out, there are 3 more lectures in this series. So you can go to our website, the Sustainability Council at University of Alberta, and register for the other 3 if you're interested. I'll throw a link in the chat. But for now, I'll introduce our speaker today. So Bastian studied mechanical engineering at RWTH Aachen University. In 2012, he started his academic career at the Institute for Combustion Engines. He was working for numerous research projects for gasoline combustion system development, for example, the model-based control for homogenized low-temperature combustion. Additionally, he was responsible for the coordination of the single cylinder testing and project support as technical expert in terms of combustion system development. Since July 2018, he is the Chief Operating Officer of the Cluster of Excellence at the Fuel Science Center, formerly Tailor-Made Fuels from Biomass. Moreover, as Chief Engineer, he coordinates several projects related to alternative fuels and combustion development at the Institute for Thermodynamics of Mobile Energy Conservation Systems. Thank you so much for being here today, Bastian, and I will pass it off to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and the opportunity to present a little bit of our research here. Particularly I would like to show you our contribution to the Fuel Science Center, which is a cluster of excellence here in Germany, and we are. Let me see if presentation works. Yes. Uh, we are a team of about almost 40 institutes here in Aachen, but also collaborating with the Forschungszentrum Jülich, which is quite close, and the Max Planck Institute here in Germany. And we are a very broad team reaching from chemistry, biology, process engineering, combustion science, up to life cycle assessment topics, social science by means of acceptance and risk studies. So we want to cover the topic of sustainable fuels based on renewable resources in the very, very big picture, but also with a deep dive into the fundamental research. Therefore, we have about 90 projects running currently within that topics, and I will give you a short insight into what we are doing. And with that, I want to show you how fuels based on renewable resources can, or in my opinion, have to contribute to a more sustainable mobility, and finally also to a CO2 neutral mobility with almost zero impact on the environment. Our research here in Europe, and maybe that's also a little bit the picture for you. What motivates our work here in Europe is mostly given by the big social challenges we have in the whole world, and the European Union. They defined some targets and some major challenges they want to address, and this is called the European Green Deal. It should improve the well-being of all people in Europe. And one of the biggest topic, of course, I mean, for the whole world, is becoming climate neutral in 2050. And as I will show you, we think that sustainable fuels based on renewable resources are one important building block to reach that target. If we look on greenhouse gas emissions, which are the driver of the global warming and the climate change, we see that in the last decades we have a good reduction of greenhouse gas emissions here in Europe. So here you see the CO2 emissions from 1990 to 2020 in Europe. And if you look at 2020, that looks quite good. We achieved the targets, or we overachieved even the targets for 2020. But then you see that there is still a very massive decrease in greenhouse gas emissions necessary to reach CO2 or greenhouse gas neutrality in 2050. And neutrality means, of course, that we have to be greenhouse gas emission neutral. But that's not possible in all fields by 100%. So the target of the European Union is to reduce emissions by 90% and then have the last 10% compensated for by forestry, carbon capture and storage, and other carbon removal technologies. But still, we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 90% related to 1990. Currently, we are about a little bit more than 20%. In 2030, there is the intermediate goal of a reduction of 55%. And some sectors are quite on a good pathway. You see the upper bar, the dark blue one, which is the energy sector. They have a big contribution currently to the reduction measures, and also agriculture and waste is quite okay to some extent. But if you look at the orange bar, which is the transport, this appears almost even to grow in 2020. And That's zoomed in a little bit in this diagram. There you can see the greenhouse gas emissions from the transport sector, with the passenger car sector being the biggest impact factor with about almost 80%. Then you have trucks and buses, and you see down below here, you see the aviation, but you have to say that's European aviation, so rather domestic aviation. And then you have ships and trains being only a small contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. So the big amount of greenhouse gas emission in transport is passenger cars and trucks and buses. And that's even increasing over the last decades. Now you could say, didn't you develop any new engines? Didn't you improve the vehicles? Yes, we did. Over the last decades, there was a massive improvement of efficiency for engines, for traffic in general. But on the other hand, with growing economy and with more people moving, we have also an increase in the transport load in Europe. For example, trucks increase, so the ton kilometers of trucks increased by more than 45% over the last 3 decades. Simultaneously, the efficiency increased, but this has been overcompensating. So if you're optimistic, the greenhouse gas emissions are stagnating because of the improvement we made over the last decades. But the question now is, how do we get that down? So we are currently still increasing, maybe stagnating, and we have to get down by at least 90%, better a little bit more. Of course, one solution is electrification. This is very, very important. It's a very efficient way to electrify passenger cars, for example. But the current status tells a little bit different story. If you look at the energy carrier that I use today, this is more than 90% fossil based. So we have the conventional diesel fuel, 66%, and the conventional gasoil fuel with 1/4. And you see that the renewable share is, particularly in transport, is very, very small, with 7%. And from that 7%, only 1.3% is electricity today. So it's a big way to exchange the whole vehicle fleet to get to 100% electricity share. The current contribution to renewable energy carriers and transport, you see here, is biodiesel. In Europe, we have the standard fuel at the gas station for diesel is called a B7, which means that there is 7% biodiesel admixture in every diesel. And we have also up to 10% ethanol in our gasoline fuel here in Europe, which is called a RON 95 E10. You get that at every gas station. And today, this is the only significant contribution for renewable resources and transport at all. Then the next question is, where does this energy come from? Diesel and gasoline is imported. In Germany, 75% of all primary energy is imported, and more than 90% of the energy for transport is imported energy. And that won't change in the future. So we still have to think about some options, how to, on a global perspective, import renewable energy. And I also will show you a few solutions, what we think can be done to import renewable energy, particularly also for transport. So in general, we have to get from a very established, if you say it positively, a pathway, a fossil-based, static, and more parallel industry to a more adaptive and flexible future. And this is what our vision here in the Fuel Science Center is, that we have a closed carbon cycle, but not only in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, also other sustainability parameters like pollutant emissions, so health impact, environmental impact has to be near to zero. So we should have the smallest possible footprint in that. Further, when it comes to renewable resources, we have way bigger fluctuation. I mean, seasons, seasonal fluctuations, daily fluctuations with the sun, wind, that is a very fluctuating system. So our conversion systems that convert our resources into energy carrier or into mobility or into heat, they have to be adaptive and they have to deal with that flexibility we have in the resources. So that's also part of our vision. And our approach to do so is, one element is called biohybrid fuels. Biohybrid fuels means that we don't want to focus only on bio-based resources, which is biofuels, which is currently the main contributor. We also don't want to shift that to only e-fuels, which you might have heard about, which are based only on renewable electricity and CO2. In our cluster, we want to combine both pathways to have, to get the best out of both worlds. And that's what we are calling then biohybrid fuels, to incorporate as much CO2 back into products as possible and to use very efficient, resource efficient conversion systems to get there. What we established over the last almost 2 decades is called the fuel design process, which means we not only looking into the synthesis of fuels, we also looking in parallel to the usage of such fuels, and we want to find the overall optimum. So it's not sufficient to only have a very sustainable production. We also have a very sustainable usage of the fuels we are producing. And to control that and to realize that, we have also a very important aspect, which is the sustainability analysis. So we have a very complex life cycle assessment around the other researchers, around all the projects, which are basically analyzing every single step in the whole value chain regarding greenhouse gas emissions, toxicity, social acceptance, economics. So a really comprehensive analysis in every step of the fuel processes we have. And that leads to our structure. So the structure of our cluster really reaches from a molecular level. So we have chemists that work really on an atomic level, how to create new molecules, up to the device level. Here we are developing engine concepts, reactor concepts. And then what I mentioned before, we have a big team that is working on life cycle assessment to analyze the full system. And this is our very complex systems. I illustrated a little bit for relevant fuel production pathways, not only the renewable ones, also the fossil ones. So that is where we are today. That's very comfortable. We drill a hole into the earth, and we get already first products. We have our crude oil, then we have a refinery, and then we have almost a whole bunch of valuable products we are using all over the world, from kerosene in planes, diesel, gasoline, heavy oils, the base for, but not forget also the plastics and also medicine and other important products coming from crude oil and natural gas. So this is already a very established and honestly also very cheap and easy system. The two products that are most relevant for road transport are gasoline and diesel. You might already know that gasoline is rather for passenger cars. You need a spark plug to ignite it, so it's a slightly different engine concept behind that. On the diesel side, that's called a compression ignition principle, where you have more torque, if you say that simply. So that's a process. In Europe, we use it also for passenger cars a lot, but it's also the main fuel for trucks, up to even ships, and even bigger engines are using diesel fuels. The composition it's not one molecule, it's a bunch of different chemicals. You see here, and I won't go into detail into chemistry today, but you see a naphthene, paraffins, aromatics, alcohols. So those are all different chemicals that define the composition here. For alternative fuels, there is also a whole bunch of different molecules available already. First way to sort them out is to characterize them as gasoline type fuels or diesel type fuels, and there are multiple available. So there is not only this one e-fuel, this one biofuel on the market. You can already find a whole bunch of different ones. For gasoline type of fuels in general, you have more smaller molecules. You have short chain alcohols like ethanol, methanol. We have also a bunch of Fischer-Tropsch fuels, which I will show you later. You can also use gaseous fuels in gasoline engines. And then on the diesel side, we see here some examples like HVO, it's hydrotreated vegetable oil. This can be done from waste. There's a Finnish company already producing a lot of HVO from used cooking oils. Of course, you have to be very careful about the sustainability parameters here. Is palm oil really sustainable? Are the used cooking oils really sustainable? So you always have to go all the way down to the base, through the first resource, to evaluate the real sustainability here. But if you do that, this is already a very good diesel fuel you can use. A lot of companies allow already in your diesel engine to operate HVO. Higher alcohols are also one option. I will show you one example later. And DME, this is a more exotic parameter, but there are already some vehicles out there. In the US, there was a truck fleet running on DME by Volvo. It's gaseous at ambient conditions, so it's a little bit different in fuel handling, but it's a valuable alternative to diesel fuel. Also for such renewable fuels, there are a lot of different pathways. Some of them use the already established processes. For example, if you have biomass, you can use gasification, and then you already have your synthetic gas. Synthetic gas means it's CO and hydrogen, so carbon monoxide and hydrogen, that's synthetic gas. And with synthetic gas, you can create, particularly with Fischer-Tropsch, almost any hydrocarbon you want to have. But for biofuels, the most prominent conversion system would be fermentation. Ethanol is one of the most common ones. Brazil, for example, they produce a lot of ethanol from sugarcane. Here again, you have to be very careful if you talk about sustainable fuel and really check, is my production of my biomass and where does my biomass come from really sustainable? Not only in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. I heard that in Brazil, they burn down the sugarcane fields twice a year. So they use fire to get rid of some snails and insects and snakes and everything for the workers. That's not really sustainable and environmentally friendly. So you have to be careful there. You don't want to tear down rainforests just to grow sugarcane. That are all factors you have to consider before you call also biofuel sustainable, but it's possible. And it's, as I said, currently the only contribution to a more sustainable mobility we have on the world. The next generation will be e-fuels, or the combination of those, as we want to. Here, of course, the first step is to create renewable electricity. And with that, the most important step is to have the hydrogen. Then to create a hydrocarbon, I also need some carbon atoms, and those have to come somehow from CO2 so that I can close my carbon cycle. For the future, here the option to choose is, of course, carbon capture, which is not easy currently, but necessary to have a really closed carbon cycle. And now if I have hydrogen and CO2, I can use water gas shift, which again produces my synthetic gas. And if I'm at this point, I'm in my already known processes and can produce almost any fuel I want to. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but of course, this is not as easy as fossil. And with every conversion step, you need some energy and you have some losses. As I said earlier, also a combination of all of them is possible, which makes the life cycle assessment not easy. So you really have to dig into the resources and evaluate the sustainability for each step, for each bit of element you have in your whole pathway. One of my favorite fuels is methanol. Methanol is the first liquid fuel you can imagine. So it's a one carbon molecule. So you have here a C1 a molecule, and it's liquid. That makes it very easy to transport. So if you have methanol, that would be a perfect transport element for renewable energy. It has not that much conversion steps. If you have carbon monoxide and hydrogen, you can produce methanol directly, and then you would be able to transport renewable energy all over the planet. Not only based on CO, you can also use CO2 directly. So that would be a direct conversion from carbon dioxide plus hydrogen to methanol. And then now the interesting thing is here is also some water as a product. And if you think about locations in the world where you have a lot of renewable energy, like North Africa, South America, that are usually places where you have a certain lack of water, and you need water to produce your hydrogen. So in this process, you have a product, water, and this also helps you to make the whole process more economically and even possible in areas where you have not that much water available. Why is methanol one of my favorite fuels? And this is a very simple experiment we performed here. It's actually a little burner you can also use on your porch as a little source for warm if it's getting a little bit cold in the night. But you see here also the difference between different fuels. On the right-hand side, you see isooctane, which is a surrogate for normal gasoline fuel. And you see here a bright yellow flame and a lot of black soot on top of this flame. So this is a very large molecule, and the combustion is not very clean. But that is similar to what gasoline would look like in a flame. Then with ethanol, you see already there's almost no black soot on top. You see that there's still a yellowish flame, but way cleaner than with isooctane. And now with methanol, here you don't see anything, but it's already burning. But there is no soot at all. So there's also no yellow light, which is an indicator for soot. And if you then have no backlight, you can see this bluish flame. So you only see methanol burning in the dark. It's a very, very clean combustion. Further, it's a very, very fast combustion, which makes it also favorable in terms of efficiency for engines. It has maybe a little bit broader ignition limits, which can also have advantages in engines. Makes it a little bit difficult to handle, though. So I don't see methanol, particularly in Europe, as a fuel you can buy at a gas station. But for professional use cases like trucks or ships, methanol is one of the currently discussed alternative molecules as fuel for engines. There's a big market not only for mobility, also for chemistry. So yeah, we will see. But I'm very positive that methanol will play a major role as fuel and energy carrier in the future when it's made from renewables in the future. Once you have methanol, there's a next step, which is also very interesting, and this is called methanol to gasoline. Here we take the methanol, and then we have a catalytic process, which I won't describe in detail here, but it's already quite in a big scale available to produce hydrocarbons, which are similar to what we know from gasoline. So that's why it's also called methanol to gasoline, because we have a one-step production of gasoline starting with methanol. Again, we have some water coming out of this process, makes it also interesting for very dry areas. And what's so interesting about methanol to gasoline? First, it's a very known process already, and there's currently one demo plant in Chile. This is a cooperation from Porsche from Germany, Siemens, and ExxonMobil, and they built already a plant which produces currently around 100,000 liters of methanol to gasoline fuel per year. And they want to increase this up to 550 million liters per year. That might sound a lot, but in terms of fuel amount and energy, this is almost nothing. I doubt that you could power all the Porsches in Europe with this amount of fuel. To give you some comparison, there is a refinery in Qatar from Shell, and they convert 48 billion liters of natural gas per day. So they are producing 55 million liters e-fuel per year, and the fossil ones, they produce 50 billion per day. So it's a first step, but it's far away from large scale and what we might need in the future. But if we do so, we would have a liquid energy carrier produced in South America, and this would possibly be easy to transport with the existing infrastructure. In my illustration, I put Germany there, but I think you get the point that this is one option to have a global market for renewable energy if you have liquid energy carriers. Here you see a picture of the construction site, and you see also that there's quite a little bit space around that area. So this is in Atacama Desert, and this is all the space they need for this 550 million liters. So it's small, but there is some potential to extend that. Coming to diesel-like fuels and a little bit from our institute here, the TME, where we also investigate engines. I want to show you one example for a more applicable fuel. And if it comes to a short-term application of a fuel, we have to have a fuel that is usable in the existing fleet. So it has to be compatible with the existing engines, with your car in your garage, and thereby we need it fast. So we need, for the production of such fuels, we have to rely on mature technologies that are available today. And of course, in total, we have to have, greenhouse gas neutral fuels, which also don't have that much impact in terms of pollutant emissions. And if we have that, we call that drop-in fuels. So fuels that are able to get blended in or are able to be used in the existing fleet with no negative impact and maybe even a positive impact. This is a joint project with different institutes. So I show you mainly what we have done at TME with the vehicle testing, but ITMC, they had a look on the processes. IFAS, they did some research on the material compatibility, and the Chair for Technical Thermodynamics, they did the life cycle assessment for this project. But as I said, I will now give you only a short insight into what we did with the vehicle testing. But first, I want to explain you what is a high-fit fuel and how do we get to that fuel. We had a project where we found out that octanol is quite a nice and sustainable, possibly sustainable biofuel. Octanol is an alcohol with 8 carbon atoms, so a long chain alcohol. And we figured out that it's quite a good diesel fuel. And if you only blend it in, it can be used in an existing vehicle. So we have here common passenger car in Germany, so small for you possibly, with a 4-cylinder diesel engine in here. And we didn't change anything here except for the fuel. We tested it with 20% and 50% of the octanol, and the rest was still fossil diesel. You see here on this diagrams some emissions, NOx emissions, that are the nitrogen oxide emissions, which are very critical for diesel engines, and they are slightly decreasing. CO2 emissions are also improving a little bit, but the major advantage is on particulates. So soot emissions, PN is particulate number and PM is particulate mass. So already with 20% octanol, we see a significant reduction. This is not very surprisingly, because in an alcohol, we have an oxygen molecule, and oxygen molecule helps to convert the hydrocarbon into CO2 and water. If you don't do that, then you possibly create soot. But if you have the oxygen already in the molecule, it helps to avoid the soot production. So that was a starting point, and we thought, we want to have a mixture of 20% octanol and diesel, because that's also very close to what is written in the legislation. The European legislation is called EN 590, and most of the parameters are already in line with the EN 590 if we have a mixture of 20% octanol and 80% diesel. Of course, we also don't want the 80% of diesel in there. We want to have a renewable fuel by 100%. And that's why we went to the technical chemistry and asked, can you imagine a process which produces us about 75% of alkanes, which is diesel-like, and about 25% longer alcohols. And they didn't have to think that much. They found that, a combination of already known processes, namely the Fischer-Tropsch process and the hydroformylation, can lead to our desired mixture of alcohols and alkanes. And this is also where the name comes from. We called it high fit fuel, so hydroformylation high, and phyto, the high fit fuels. Those two processes are on a very high technology readiness level, so it's basically established since almost 100 years. Of course, also the first step, the synthetic gas, has to be renewable, and that is where currently the development is ongoing. But any sector needs synthetic gas, so the chemical sector needs it. And that's why it's very sure that there will be a source for sustainable synthetic gas in the near future. The Fischer-Tropsch process is very interesting. It's very flexible, and you can adjust it by temperature. So you can have a high temperature Fischer-Tropsch process, which produces particularly this C5 to C10 alkenes, which then converts into the alcohols we like, up to like 65%. If you have then a low temperature Fischer-Tropsch, you have a lower share of alcohols, and this gives us a little bit flexibility in fuel design. So we can now check if in our engine, which alcohol content is sufficient or desirable. Sorry. So the first thing we checked for different alcohol contents was the compatibility of the fuel. And we did that for some parameters. You see here some examples. C10 number is the indicator for the ignitability. Diesel fuel is somewhere around 52. Then you have here density, viscosity, and lubricity. You see here in the green one, we have the common global fuel standards. So we didn't focus on the EN 590, the German one, or the European one. We checked different legislations. That's why we don't have a line. We thought it should be globally applicable. You see here, the only parameter that is way out of, not way, but a little bit out of the scope is the lubricity, which is quite easy to handle. To compensate that, we added some additive, only a small portion, a small ppm portion, to get that down. Of course, we also checked some overlap with other parameters, but this is quite a common additive and it doesn't impact other parameters. Then in the next step, we choose two reasonable boundaries, so 20% and 40% alcohol content to be tested in our test vehicle. And then we choose, we took those and we mixed them together in a certain amount and put it into this light commercial vehicle. It's a 3.3 ton van. And it's a series production engine. So we have here a four-cylinder 130 kilowatts diesel engine, which is already found on the road. So it's a certification of the current European legislation, and you can buy that engine and you can drive it on the road. What's a little bit special is that we set it up as a hybrid powertrain, but that is not important for our tests. We wanted to test the performance of the fuel, and we did that in what's called the World Harmonized Light Vehicles Test Cycle. So that's a standard that is similar all over the world. And it's a test procedure where you drive with such a vehicle and you measure the emissions, and at the end you have to meet some limits of the legislation. You see here different emissions. So the upper one is called NOx engine out. So that's what's coming out of the engine. Then every vehicle has also an exhaust after treatment system that then converts the engine out emissions and reduces them like an SCR catalyst, reducing NOx emissions. And then at the end, you have tailpipe coming out of the vehicle. You also see here the soot emissions. And what's first a little bit disappointing is that the NOx emissions are increasing. There are some reasons why that's the case. I won't go into much detail here. That's mainly due to the calibration, and we didn't touch the calibration at all. In a real application, you could even do some software changes, but we didn't change anything. And then that leads at some points to an increase in NOx emissions. But the very positive point is that the soot emissions are decreased as expected quite significantly. And why can I say significantly? That is when you accumulate all the emissions over the test cycle, then you see, particularly for NOx emissions, we are in all cases way below the limits. So that is something that doesn't have a significant negative impact. The soot emissions are reduced by more than 50% here, which is a bigger advantage than drawback. And what the conclusion of that is that with our fuel, which is potentially 100% renewable, we can use it in an existing vehicle. We don't have to change anything. We don't have any emission limits that are exceeded, and we even have some advantages in emissions. So we think with that work, we found a very interesting fuel candidate which can be used at drop-in fuel. If you are interested in more details, there's a paper currently under review. Unfortunately, it's not yet published, but if you have any questions, of course, you can also contact me, and I can go into more detail here. Then for the last few minutes, I want to talk about two more aspects. If people discuss about e-fuels, there are always two things they come up with why e-fuels are not possible. The first one is they say they are awfully inefficient. I mean, awful is not a really good quantification. And you also have to think about which boundaries do you look at? In this study, you see here energy efficiency from the energy source to the wheel. So this includes the conversion of the energy down to the propulsion. So that's called a well-to-wheel efficiency. And this is already quite a complete way to look at this. A little bit further would be cradle to grave, which also includes the production and recycling of the vehicles. And then after that, there would be life cycle for the vehicles. But well to wheel already shows my point. And of course, every renewable electricity you can use directly should be used directly. So battery electric vehicles are very important because they are more efficient. But they are not 10 times more efficient as engines. They are about 3 times more efficient than a modern state-of-the-art combustion engine vehicle, as was pointed out by this study. So a factor of 3 in efficiency, and that's the conclusion here is if you have electricity and you can use it directly, do it because it's more efficient. But now the question is, where does my energy source come from? As soon as I try to get renewable energy from other continents even, and this is where the renewable energy is more efficient. In North Africa, the solar panels can produce about 3-4 times more electricity per day as in Germany, for example. So you have to take into account also how much electricity can be produced per solar panel, per windmill. And this is way more efficient if you go to North Africa, South America, or anywhere else in the world. And then you have to get this renewable energy back to Europe or Germany. And if you then consider the transport into this calculation, into this way-to-wheel calculation, you see that you have to convert the electricity at least to hydrogen. And if you then convert the hydrogen back to electricity, you have 2 times a loss in efficiency here. And this is illustrated here. So to get your renewable energy to Europe, you have to convert it into hydrogen and then back into electricity until you reach the electric vehicle. Still, there is advantages for the battery electric vehicles, yes, but now they are in the same ballpark, and it's way easier to transport liquid energy carriers than hydrogen even. So what I try to say here is efficiency is important, of course, but it shouldn't be the only parameter to evaluate if something is good or bad. Particularly in a larger scale and in a global perspective, also other options should be on the table and not ruled out only because of efficiency. The second discussion is always about costs. It's way too expensive. The costs for e-fuels highly depend on hydrogen costs, and the hydrogen costs again depend on where the hydrogen is produced and how. Still, this diagram is a little bit complicated, and I won't go into detail here, but you see here the costs for hydrogen on the x-axis, and then the fuel costs for some fuels, MEHO, that's methanol. So the yellow line would be methanol. And the prices here are the prices in Europe, not even currently. I mean, currently the price in Europe are already at about 2 euros here, including tax. But the point is, you see the break-even point between the costs of the fuel and the fossil ones, is shifting in the next years, and you can reach quite cheap points here if you produce your hydrogen very cheap. There was a study calculating how much this gasoline I showed you earlier from Chile would cost in the future, or not in the future, today. And they came up with a price of €1.30 per liter gasoline. And that's actually without tax. But that's cheaper than gasoline costs with tax today. So with a tax, you can also play around. But some people claim that e-fuels costs like €5 per liter. But a lot of studies show that we are already in an area of €1, €1.30 per liter gasoline fuel. And this is, I think, particularly if you consider it as a renewable fuel, quite competitive and possible to put such a fuel on the market. So I state that they are already cost competitive, that you shouldn't look on efficiency only. And I also state that we need that fuels to reach a sustainable mobility. At the end, I would like to make a little bit advertisement for our own conference here in Aachen. So if you are interested in visiting Aachen or plan to visit Aachen in the summer, we have a conference in June. The call for contributions is out there. The conference itself has no costs, so you are invited in terms of the conference dinner and the conference itself. If you have some work you want to present, you will get the presentation later and with all the links. And I would be happy to welcome you here in Aachen, not only for our conference, we are also always open for some exchange. We have already made some good experience with students from Alberta. One of my friends, he came as a master student from Alberta to Aachen, and now he became professor in Alberta. So it can be quite a success story, and we are very open to continue that. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention. I'm always open for questions now or later via email. You can also find us on some of the social media platforms. And And yeah, with that, I like to end my presentation. I hope I didn't exceed my time too much. And yeah, thank you very much.